Antoinette, I'm going to ask you, can you share a little bit about what you're doing in the classroom or in the residencies to foster cultural humility among your students?
Yes. So I am known as a provocateur in my classroom. So every other week, I post either a video, an article, something in the news, or a post that would get the students talking about these diverse issues. And I believe that if I expect my students to be culturally humble, that starts with me. So I am one that I'm not afraid to be human in my classroom. If I'm hurting, I'm going to tell my students, hey, COVID-19 is stressing me out. How are you all feeling? And I model that for them. I give them permission to be vulnerable. I give them permission to be humble because I bring that to the table. I help them to understand that I'm not all-knowing, but I commit to knowing enough to teach you and to lead you. And what I don't know, I commit to finding out so that I bring it to you. I think it starts there. It starts with being human. It starts with giving ourselves permission to be uncomfortable. I tell students in the very beginning that you're going to have some spaces where you feel uncomfortable in my classroom because of the conversations that we have. But please know that you'll be validated if you do not believe as everyone else believes. And when you give them permission to be uncomfortable, that's where they give themselves permission to be vulnerable.
Well, thank you.
In your space of comfort. When you're comfortable, you're not learning anything. It's uncomfortable that you're allowed to stretch, you're allowed to grow and reach your next level of competency.
Can I add to that?
Yes, certainly.
So Antoinette, thank you for sharing that and what you do in your classroom. And what came front of mind for me as you were describing sort of your practice is creating safe zones. I try to create a safe zone in my course where students feel like they can have self-reflection and self-critique. One of the things that I do is I allow them to do mock interviews or mock oral defenses right there within our cohort. And then they work with their peers to say how well they did, what they could have done differently. Even if they have a job interview, we'll let them come in our cohort and actually their peers will ask them questions. They even help them prepare for a job interview. It's a safe zone and when you start having students be self-aware, then they could take that away from Walden and then start to practice that in their work environment. So thank you, Antoinette, for sharing that. I love the practice you're using.
And I wanted to share something too, because Greg started off, I'm glad, because I was sitting here boiling, if it's okay for me to say this. I mean, it was just troubling my soul. So when Antoinette was talking about this, like what Greg said, the safe zone, but I felt that one of the things that's so heavy in cultural humility is silence. Silence on the people who are powerful and can do something, that have power to change things. And then also silence of the people who are being hurt, because those people are feeling shut down by that power. And one of the things that I thought was important, what Antoinette was talking about, kind of similar, is that I feel that giving students voice, or our voices, we need to be heard. So even taking I felt a passion to take experiences of my students to my administration or other people, to let them know and get the students' permission, like, can I share this? Because we need to hear your story. We have to hear your voice. It's painful, it's hurtful, but we've got to hear it. And I didn't want it to be such a petting zoo for the students, like they're on display and their pain is up there for us to touch, poke, and feel, but more that we have to hear so that we can be activated to do the things that Antoinette is talking about. So that's all I want to add. I'm sorry if I took too long.
Oh, no, thank you so much for adding those things. I wanted to go to Kathy for a second. Similar to the question I asked of Antoinette, can you share with us what you're doing in the academic settings you're in and training settings you're in to close the student success gap amongst your students?
I knew that. Sure. Just piggybacking on the excellent remarks, I'd written stuff down that it's like you stretched through and took it off of my paper, and which means we're all feeling and thinking the same thing. You know, I hear the term cultural humility. I think about the students, I think about faculty, and this word keeps popping up, and it's popped up many times before in conversations if you sat with me. Do I desire to even look at that concept and look within so that I can be what I expect my students and peers to be? Some people that talk about cultural humility have never danced with cultural humility. And one of the things I share when I'm training professionals, I share a story about a practice of foot washing that my family, we do once in a while. We need to do one, but it's a very humbling process where I put myself, and I'll give you the quick example of washing my twin boy's feet some years ago. I placed him at a position that was higher than I knelt and washed his feet, dried them. Then I said, I'm not a perfect mother. I know I've said and done things that made you go, can you tell me about a time when I've done that? And I listened. And it hurt because he went to town on me. He just said, you did do this. And I had to say, first of all, acknowledge my actions and how it impacted him, and then seek his forgiveness. Then we would pray together, and then we would switch it. And I think that it's important for us to understand that our students who are trying to be efficient come with a story. Our students are feeling all that we're talking about, all of the stuff we've sat through, listening, you know, with the pandemics, the racial tension, the COVID, and then we're all dealing with losses. We've lost people, people every day. It's frightening to turn on, look at your phone and look at social media. Our students are carrying this stuff too. So it's important to remember those students have stories. They're still trying to function and wear those hats. But it's important for us to put ourselves in a position to not only be their educator, but one who genuinely cares about their story and how we can take that story and take them, get them to the next level. So we have to be aware of what's inside of us, because if we don't face that, it will control and dictate how we listen, how we operate, how we respond to our students, and ensuring their success. So it's a holistic piece that we need to be aware of.
So, Savitri, can I add, you know, I know you're going to ask me a question, so feel free to take my question away, you know. But wow, KG, I love that. You know, man, you just got my mind to thinking. You know, I think it's important. We're living in a time where people are being called out on things. And what I heard you and Antoinette said and others say, it's a time of not calling out, but calling in. Yes. And Savitri, I think that's a gift that you have. Since the first time I met you, although you have a position, you never call us out. You always call us in to a topic, a discussion. Yes. And as organizations, we're always focused on how to change the organization as a whole without thinking about it. Really starts with one leader at a time, one faculty member at a time, member at a time. And it directly connects to what Brett was talking about, even as he's talking about enrollment. Our enrollment will never increase if we don't build relationships, which come from building trust. And then I'll end with this, what KG is talking about. I said to you, Savitri, yesterday, it's important. Relationships matter, especially as faculty members. And it starts with trust. I had a gentleman tell me a couple weeks ago, he said it also starts with intimacy. And he said this, into me, see. Into me, see. And I've tried to apply that to my students, not to look at them as 20 or 30 students at a time, but look at each one of their journeys individually and see into each one of their life experiences and not call them out, but to call them in to this Walden journey.
If I can just finish, just piggyback on what you're saying, Greg. Two things. The calling in, I have a colleague, Dr. Shinobia Webster-Hill, who often uses that term and is intentional and teaches that to us. It's so important to remember that our students come with various gifts, and one of those gifts may be a discerning eye. They know what we're carrying. So we have to do the work that we need to do and to ensure that we are desirous of cultural humility in order to ensure culturally responsive practices in the classroom.
And I'm really trying so hard to sit and wait myself, as Benton said, and I'm fidgeting, I'm like having some moments here so much. But, just a couple of things. I so appreciate that. And Kathy, or KG, that is very much, my intent behind my earlier statement about making it mandatory.
Right.
Because, if we don't have the desire, don't see the need of having it, or think that we already know it, then we won't go get it. And we won't allow ourselves to be in those spaces, Greg, where we can be seen into.
Yes.
And sometimes we need other people to help us see into ourselves, because we have our own socializations, right? We have our own conditioned minds. And so unless somebody helps us see that conditioning, we may not see it for ourselves. And so, this creating the safe space, I do want to make a comment about that. That safe does not mean that it's easy and comfortable. That I like to pair safe with courage, that it is a safe, courageous space so that you can get the information you need to get. Whatever truth that's there, you have help in getting that to come out, but also recognizing that once you're at the table, you don't leave from the table because it's uncomfortable and it's unfamiliar, or because that seat is hot. You may have to step away a minute and say, ooh, I need a breather, I need some iced tea or something, but you come back to the table and get what you need to get. So, I just want to make this emphasis. We're talking a lot about the students, but it's about us as well, and how we are with each other as faculty, how we're interrelating with one another in emails, how we're interrelating with one another when we were on ground in FM and residencies and all those things. But it's us together as well. How are we connecting and hearing one another? And how is that influencing our expectations of performance, our expectations of each other, and our expectations of students?
Savitri, I have one quick question that in terms of, I think we could ask.
Okay.
And dealing with the students or even ourselves. We could ask, when was the first or last time you learned a valuable lesson from nature, a child, a stranger, underserved population, a person that you admire, or someone who appeared to have a different lifestyle or from your worldview? That will help, I believe, to spark a conversation, because sometimes people may not feel comfortable. And so when you ask them that question, our students in the discussion forum, that levels the playing field. And then you also have an insight into their responses. So you know the landscape that you're dealing with and how you can even respond or interact with students, including faculty.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you.